Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome and thanks again for listening wherever you are and however you are listening to us. Today's topic is going to focus primarily on individual skill development. We're going to focus mostly on the individual player and how to build individual players with the skill sets that they need to be the most effective in whatever system they're going to play and on whatever team they're going to play on. So to help discuss the process of teaching individual skill development, I'm really happy to be joined by junior NBA coach, Coach Arndray Gay. Coach, how are you today?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. This will be, I think, really informative for those coaches, especially who have maybe really focused on the team aspect, and they're focused on a lot of what happens when they get their group of guys or group of girls, and sometimes some coaches like me, I don't do a whole lot of work necessarily with individuals and individual sessions and things like that. So I think that this will be really informative and really useful. So let's kind of jump right into it, Coach, with your basketball journey, your coaching journey, and everything in between. Where's the game taking you?
So I'll go back to high school. I don't want to go too far back, but I started out, in junior high school, and then my skills furnished a lot quickly than most people. And then I ended up I earned a scholarship through a boys club, and we played on a team called Academic All-Stars. And I earned the chance of playing or attending Lawrence Academy, which is in Groton, Massachusetts. I played there 3 years. I averaged about 33 a game. After there, graduated, and then I played at Adelphi University. And then from Adelphi, I did about a year or so in playing in China. And then after somewhat of the playing days, I kind of got into the role of teaching and working at a school. And then I became the player development coach. And then I led my way into coaching the girls. And then I just had my first season, which just passed this year, of coaching the varsity boys. And we didn't have the greatest success, but I'm itching and hoping we can get back into the groove this year, because I know we're going to have a bounce back season.
Yeah, love that attitude, it's about the journey, it's about the process, and sometimes you get that first year and you just kind of getting your feet under you, and then you can kind of lay the groundwork for where you want to go. So yeah, that's great. And you've had a long journey. Basketball's taken you a lot of places, opened up a lot of doors for you, for sure. And one of the things too that I noticed just from kind of looking at your social media a little bit is you do still play in some capacity. You still play. You're still active enough in that you're finding games to play and staying involved in playing that way. What do you think the value is for you in making sure that you're still getting out there and still playing basketball? How does that kind of help you as a coach that you're still kind of in the game, even if you're just playing sometimes?
Well, for me, it's I'm older now, so I'll be 42 on Tuesday. Yeah. So for me, it's, adequate rest, proper meals, stretching. Stretching is key. And my love for the game, man, it just keeps me, being spontaneous and able to play at such a high level, somewhat you can say. And I'm not out there with guys generally my age. It's usually these guys are 21, 24, and they're giving me a lot of respect. And many of them, they do know who I am and what I stood for and things that I've done. So it's always a pleasure and a blessing. And I'm not, fully healed. There are some injuries that are lingering, but I still have a great time. And then I kind of take what I do on the court from my aspect and also the defense of playing against these young kids, and it allows me to see the floor better. So I take that back to my players, and I create drills And with those drills, I help them to furnish their skill sets to apply it in the games that they play today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you probably have those moments then when you're playing and then something happens and then you're like, huh, this would be like a good teachable moment, or okay, like this is something that I could build a drill around or do something around. So
definitely.
Yeah, I think it's great that like you kind of stay active, and what it kind of helps you too, I'm sure, with a little bit is that you can kind of be in the mindset of the players that you coach because you're still playing. So you kind of can think about, what are my players who I'm working with? What are they thinking about? Well, it's probably similar to some of the things you're thinking about when you're on the court as well.
Right. Just, for me, I'm competitive.
Yeah.
So, I get a lot of the times my high school boys, they'll call me Old Man River or all these different names, but, it's been 10 years and not a single one of them have beat me yet. So I feel great about that.
Yeah, love the competitive environment, and love that you're still going at it, and I think it shows too within your coach and how much that you obviously still love the game, because not only are you coaching it, you're still playing it, and I'm sure that's infectious, and I'm sure your players get that. They're like, okay, I'm getting coached by somebody who really loves this game, because not only are they coaching me, but they're also spending their own time playing it too. So
right,
absolutely. All right, so.
Yeah.
Let's kind of get into topic here, a bit of individual skill development. So like I said earlier, you do not only with the coaching that you've done now, you've done things with like the junior NBA coaching and working with individuals as well. You have a lot of experience working with young athletes, especially those that might be just starting or beginning their journey. What is the process that you kind of go through in starting a player off so that their fundamentals and their principles are being taught the right way?
So for me, I work with various ages. I can get them from the ages of 5 all the way up to the collegiate level. So the first thing is when it's the younger kids, I like to say peewees, I kind of see where their skill set is at. And usually with the young kids, I don't like to put a lot of pressure on them because they're kids. What I tend to do is just see, okay, can you actually dribble the ball? If not, okay, then they'll stay in the actual stationary. And I'll just say you got 15 seconds, right hand pound from the ground to the shoulder. Then I'll say 15 seconds from the hip to the floor, and then 15 seconds ankle to knee. So teaching them the 3 different levels of what it feels like to dribble the ball, but also they're gaining strength within that arm and doing those 3 different steps. They'll repeat the drill with their left hand, and probably about a good 2 to 3 minutes of doing that drill. Afterwards is various other drills that I have them do, but they're all stationary. I don't like to skip steps because skipping steps, you're just kind of cheating. Mm-hmm. And most of the times I do get some kids that, I know how to dribble. And I never said you didn't know how to dribble. I just want to teach you the correct way. Yeah. So you know what it's like before you start moving, and if you're able to control the ball. So after they complete the stationary drills, then we'll start out from baseline to half court of a moderate sort of jog, right hand up, left hand back. And then they'll do it again. And afterwards, I have them sprint forward and then kind of retreating backwards. And then they'll cross over to the left hand, sprint forward, retreat backwards. So they're getting the whole package deal in terms of going forward. So I'm teaching them the forward game, which I like to call north and south. Mm-hmm. After they acquire those north and south skills, I like to call it the north, south, east, west. So now they're going to go forward, backwards, left, and right. And when they acquire all those things, now I start giving them the through the leg crossover and all these different skill sets that they can acquire to make them feel comfortable when they're playing in the game. Mm-hmm.
So is it, I'm assuming then that like everybody's at a different skill set, and everybody kind of comes in with things that are different in terms of their ability and skill set, but then also as you're teaching them that right. They also pick it up at different rates, and they pick it up at different speeds. So is that a challenge to kind of like balance that? I don't know how many coaches there are and how many players it is that you're working with, but is that kind of something that you work through, like where everybody's at and trying to help them where they're at?
Yeah, usually what I do is I see who has what skill set, and then I'll separate. I'll put those who are not as skillful on this drill, and that's not to take away from them, because towards the end I'll tie them all together.
Yeah.
And then the ones that are skillful at it, I put them in their own area, and they're doing the same drills, but it's at a higher skill level. Afterwards, I tend to use them as my, group leaders, to make them feel comfortable and that they're not left out because of the fact of where their skills are at. And those who are not as fortunate, they will get the help, not only from me, but from that player who has that skill set. So this way they're building that friendship, that trust, that team chemistry, and it makes them feel comfortable. I don't want anybody coming to the camps and they feel, oh, because he's better than me, I don't want to do it. I'm like, no, you can get to that level. You just have to apply yourself and really work hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get kids who, oh, I know how to do this already, coach. I'm sure you do. But then when they get in the game, it's a different story.
Yeah.
It's like, then now you want to listen to me, or you still want to go out and try it on your own? So sometimes you got to let the boat rock and see where they can get, if they can carry themselves out there. And if not, you catch them, and then you say, okay, now listen to me and let me show you the right way.
Right. And then I think with that kind of being paired up with people, it sort of builds, like you said, that friendship, and it kind of also relates back to when they're at a really young age. I think it's really important that they kind of fall in love with the game, and that they love playing it. And so if they have that positive experience, is that something that's really important to you at that younger level, that you're kind of helping the kids kind of just fall in love with the game of basketball?
It is, because I've had one kid I was working with last year, and I felt like, he was forced to love the game. And I could see he didn't really seem too interested in doing it. And he would do it because dad was there or mom was there. And, I felt something different with him. And we sat down and I said, well, listen, I don't want you to do something you're not comfortable doing or you just don't want to do at all. Is basketball something you love? And he said, yeah, I love it, but I just don't feel like I need to be doing it every day. I said, okay, well, you just let me know what days you want to work or how many days you would like to work, and we'll go from there. But is it something that you really want to do, or do you feel like you're being forced into it? He said at first he felt as if he was being forced. And that force allowed him to garner the love of the game. So I said, okay, well, at least you found the way to love it.
Yeah.
But do you still want to continue doing it? And he said, yeah, but I just want to take the baby steps. And I said, well, let me see you shoot the ball. He shot the ball, and man, it was horrible. That force didn't allow him to build up his shooting technique, because all he just wanted to do was just shoot. And for me, I don't do those steps. I'm like, you got to learn how to dribble. From the dribble, you got to learn how to dribble going in motion, then to the layup, and then the dribble to the layup. So I like to do various steps before it's just saying, do this, do that, do this. Yeah. And as he started to see his skills furnish more and more, he became more excited about it, calling me on a regular basis, DM me on the regular basis, asking for workouts. So we did workouts and we would do basketball drills. And, he's gotten a lot better. And if I'm not mistaken, he actually played on the JV this past year. So he felt a little bit better about himself.
Well, that does bring up a good point, in that you are going to have like players who come in who like love the game and they're all about it and they're really excited. And then there also might be those players who they might have been like forced, or they might have been kind of pushed into it, and they might end up falling in love with it. And then you also probably have players who maybe they love it, but now they hit that wall, and now they feel like they don't like it as much because they're not seeing that success. And so there's all kind of those situations, it feels like, that you kind of have to work with. And kind of it comes down to, I'm assuming, knowing your players, kind of knowing where they're at, where their head is at, and building that relationships to kind of help them on whatever path they're on.
Right. Yeah, it's all about trust.
Yeah.
It's all about trust. As a coach, you have to build trust, because sometimes your players when you're in a game or when they're in the game and you're coaching it, they might have a bad game. And that mental block might be the key to your success. And the only way that can happen is by having that trust.
Mm-hmm.
And that trust would allow them to open up and talk to you more as a parent, but on the outside.
Yep.
When that happens, they'll feel more comfortable.
Yep.
And I've had cases like that where kids had the mental block and they just didn't feel like, oh, I don't want to play anymore. And I'm like, well, you have a skill set. Why don't you want to play? Oh, I just don't want to play. No, there's something more to it. And, you know, when practice is over and they'll see me collecting the equipment, I'll find one kid that just stuck around to help me. And then we start talking. We'll sit in the office and they'll tell me everything. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what made you open up? Well, coach, I can trust you. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's a great thing, but what made you trust me? Well, I see how you are. And I see the love that you have for all your players and the love that you have just as a coach for the game. And when I hear those things, it warms my heart because, you know, although sometimes people on the outside looking in might think you're a bad person, but I never worry about that. I always stay focused on my players. I'm a father. And you're going to get certain things right and you're going to get certain things wrong. And as humans, we just have to learn from that and build and be better. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do with my players. And I teach them things about life and also about the sport.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach to have because so many of our players, you know, they're developing as people, and then obviously they need people who support them, people who care about them, people who trust them, and what we do and what we provide is so much more than just the game for some of our players, and we have an opportunity to do a lot more than that. Absolutely. So talk about trust and them needing to trust you. So now we're going to go from dribbling. Let's start with layups here because I'm curious. This is like two parts here. Is it when you're working with, let's say, like teenagers or a little bit of older kids, do you find yourself doing a lot of unteaching of bad habits, or there's some bad habits that they've developed with something like layups? And then with the younger ones, what is the process from, okay, now we can dribble, here's how we're going to get from this dribbling to doing a layup the right way?
So with teenagers, what I tend to do first, because everybody just feels that they're Allen Iverson, Steph Curry, and all these different things. So what I like to do first is just I'll run 2 scrimmages. And this will allow me, everybody writes their name on a paper, nickname and everything. These kids got all types of stuff. So the scrimmage will allow me to see if they're setting screens, if the screen's being done correctly. How are you coming off the screen? Are you sticking to the screen closely so it can be applied the correct way? Are you calling out your man for defense? Are you doing more vocal talking? So all those different points I look for. The skill set can always be readjusted for teenagers, but I try to do more of the actual knowledge of the game. So this way, because it always changes when they go from middle school to high school, right into college. And the reason so is guys get taller, they get bigger, they get stronger, they get faster at every single aspect of the levels. So I try to teach those different aspects more to these, I would say 11, 12, all the way and up to 18. So this way they know the difference in terms of the game. What I do with the skill set is, for them, I kind of set a timer to it. So I'll give them about 30 seconds to see how many right-hand layups you can make without missing. All right, you did that. Now let's see how many you can do left hand without missing. All in a while, it's kind of like a speed dribble. So from the baseline to the left elbow to the right elbow, lay it up, get your rebound, do it again. So they'll get about 30 seconds, and I'm looking for their form. I'm looking for their speed, how they're controlling the ball, all those different things. Those are somewhat of the things that I do when it comes to my teenagers. As for my little peewees and younger kids, it's all about just teaching the fundamentals of the game. So I find myself doing more speaking, more exhibiting on how the dribble would look. Take your time. Don't be afraid to mess up. Nobody's perfect. You're not going to control the ball at such a young age. And they want to do the crossover because they see Steph Curry do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, you do realize you're 5 and the ball might not make it through your legs on time. So, and just allowing them to be themselves. And I do run scrimmages with them, and I just kind of let them be them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if they turn the ball over. I stop it and just say, okay, this is where you stand at. Out of bounds, you did turn it over. Okay, so you stand here, you can't move because you're going to inbound the ball. So teaching those little fundamental things so they can grow and develop with it, and along with the skill set, is what I do with the younger crowd.
Mm. And then I think what you mentioned was a really good point about, especially with the younger ones, about like making mistakes, and like that's encouraged, like make those mistakes, you know, like try to the point where you're going to make a mistake, because to me, if you're never making mistakes, even at any age, like you're not trying, because you're going to make mistakes, and that's what needs to happen in order for the growth to happen. Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you kind of do that assessment. And so when you're doing that assessment and just kind of watching them play, then do you like give that feedback to them? Do you say like, here's what I saw out of you, like we did this, this, and this, or like
always
is that so you're communicating that message to them?
Yep. Communication is key. You know, you have to allow them to know where their mistakes were, how we tweak it. You know, sometimes they might go 100 miles an hour and say, hey, let's bring it down to 60. Maybe let's dummy it down to even 50 on those aspects. So once they start to slow it down and use more of a thought process, so now we're at the 50-50 mark. So it's like, okay, I can use my skills, but let me also use my brain to make both of them work together for the game. Right.
Because they both got to be there. Like if the effort's all there and you're going 100 miles an hour, but you're not thinking about what you're doing, then we can get some bad situations happening. So you mentioned there's a couple of references here to Steph Curry, and so I'm so curious about this when it comes to shooting, because we know that kids there's a certain age that they can't even shoot because they don't have the strength to do it, and they're not able to do it. And so how do you kind of deal with the fact that like a lot of kids, they see things on Instagram or whatever and about shooting 40-foot threes and all that, but you know, they're not going to make a shot from 5 feet. So is that a process that you go through of explaining like, okay, here's what we need to get down first with shooting, and don't even think about shooting from anywhere further than that?
Right. So I give them an acronym, and it's called BEEF, which is balance, elbow, eyes, and follow through.
Yeah, I had that too.
So afterwards, once I explain what BEEF is, my little kids, I get a mat. I bring a mat out, so everybody gets their own mat. They'll lay on the floor, and so we kind of work on it without a ball. So I have them lay with the left arm. If they're righty, your left arm stays flat on the ground. So they're kind of, you know, they'll use their right arm, so they're doing the whole follow through. So I want you to set up your elbow, 90-degree angle. They're looking up at the sky, so now your eyes is pointed up at your target. And I want you to just give the full follow through. So that's how they work with that. Afterwards, I like to give them somewhat of a weighted basketball. So now this way they're building on the strength. So I want them to, again, they're just shooting only with that right hand. They're not applying the left hand just yet. So this way they're understanding that this can also be used as a floater, but you're also building strength in the arm. So this way, when it comes to shooting, now this is what it'll look like. So the next thing is when I bring both hands together, I like to call it the T formation, which is both thumbs will form the letter T. And then you never want to shoot in front of your face because you can't see your target. So either the ball is above the head slightly, and then that's when you apply the BEEF mechanics and you do the whole full follow through.
Yeah. So it's just a step by step. Like we gotta start with this, then we can build to this, then we can build to this, right? And then one of the things that I can imagine is a challenge, because I know it's a challenge for me personally and a lot of coaches, is then as you get to the older level, let's say that teenage level or even a little bit beyond that, is that when you notice that their mechanics aren't correct, but they've been doing it a certain way for so many years. Is there a process that you need to go through sometimes with them, with like how you can make them unlearn and then kind of start over again? Or is there a way where you sort of let them have like these quirks in their shot? I'm just curious about that process when they've been shooting a certain way for years and years and years and it doesn't really look right.
Right. I had a couple kids that they felt their shot was perfect. So I said, okay, I want you to give me, you got 10 shots. And I never really concentrate on the misses. I always say makes. And what I'm looking for within those makes is 1, your movement, 2, your endurance, 3, your form. Because sometimes when people don't understand is shooters, if you look at Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, those guys, their endurance is impeccable.
Yeah.
And they're moving to free up themselves, or they're dribbling, or they're running around screens. And when they catch that ball, it's lights out. So I tend to put my players in that same position. And when I see them fatiguing out, I'm like, well, there it goes. Your shot is changing because now your elbows could have been tucked in, but because you're tired, they're out. So this is why your shot, this is why your shot is missing. So the first thing I do is I stand by them and I have them just keep that elbow tight in. And I work on it where they're like this and they go on the full follow through. So they'll do that about 5 or 6 times with the ball until they feel comfortable. And then I'm standing at the baseline, I'll pass them the ball. Same thing, they want to raise up and shoot. Pass the ball, raise up and shoot. So this way they're tucking that elbow in. And then I like to call it the sideline to foul line shooting, where they're sprinting. I give them 45 seconds. They got to make 10 shots in 45 seconds, where they're sprinting from one sideline, going to the right elbow, the opposite sideline to the left elbow, and they're shooting jump shots. I'm still the rebounder and passing it to them. I'm building their endurance, their focus, eye concentration, shoot and release, all those different things. Once they start feeling comfortable, then we'll start working on other shooting techniques that'll really benefit them in the long run.
Yeah. So I think you bring up a really good point. I was thinking of Ray Allen, right, when you said that the amount of movement that Ray Allen does, amount of stuff that he's coming off screens and he catches it and he's got to put it right up and
yeah.
That, you know, I could probably be a great 3-point shooter if all I had to do was just stay there stationary and just shoot it free and never.
Exactly.
but there is such a difference between, you know, how you're going to get open, you know, catching it and then, you know, shooting off the dribble. And then is even what I tell my girls is about, you know, you can be a great shooter at the beginning of practice, but, you know, 30 minutes into a game when you're exhausted, you know, what's your form going to look like, and
yep.
What are the shots you're going to be putting up then? And so is that the biggest thing that you see, is that the elbow then is that the biggest thing that you see that needs correcting sometimes in people's shots?
It's kind of like, I always like to use the baseball analogy.
Mm-hmm.
If the pitcher's follow through is off, he's not getting a strike.
Yeah.
And the basket is the same thing as the strike zone. That's your target. So your elbow has to be tucked in. It doesn't have to be so tucked in, but you want it in more than you want it out, because that will make the difference in terms of where that ball is going.
Mm-hmm.
So if a pitcher throws a wild pitch, it's because he flailed his elbow. So it's the same thing with a shooter. If you notice, when most shooters complain, when they get tapped slightly on their elbow and they miss a shot, oh, I got fouled. Yeah, you did get fouled, but sometimes the ref missed it, so it looked like a bad shot.
Yeah.
So that's that technique that I try to explain to them, where this is what happens if your elbow is out. Your wrist might be on target, but your elbow is not on line with your wrist.
Right.
And it's the same thing with a gun. If you try to go in there free fall, shooting at a target, not holding it with full force and grip, that bullet's not going to go where it goes. It's going to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So use some of those analogies to explain to kids, and this way they'll create their own mind frame from it and say, okay, now I see what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And the spreading of the fingers, the T formation, the full follow through, eyes on the target, those are just some key incentives for them to have along the way.
So then with these different ways that you go about teaching, it seems to me that you have almost like these like phrases or like these acronyms that you can go to, and has that been really helpful if you're saying things like beef or the gun or the T formation, or those things that you would recommend for people who are gonna like get into skill training with players, to kind of have these that can make the connection with the players really easily?
Yeah, it's definitely a tool to have, because sometimes kids need to create their own image to see something,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, okay, I got what you're saying now, rather than us always showing it to them every single time. You don't want to be the main person doing all the drills, because then it becomes repetitive and then you lose the kid. Allow the kids themselves to do it, so this way they can see what it feels like, and then they build that comfort zone to actually go forth and do it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, the kids are the one who need to be putting the work in and be doing
Yeah.
these things, right? Yeah, you don't want to be getting more of a workout than the kids are.
No, not at all.
So one of the things that I hear sometimes when it comes to players is that when they work with a trainer, they're going to these sessions, is that they want to focus too much on like flashy skills and things that aren't necessarily going to be things that they're using in a game. And
Right.
are there things that you think that skill coaches may be teaching that aren't as valuable to a player's development? Are those things that you've noticed?
I think the whole art of the game has changed, and I think some coaches just want to focus on that. To me, I feel like basketball is 90% mental, and I always like to teach the mental game, but not to allow the certain points of the game to get away. So if you think about it for a second, the post-up game, kids don't have it today. You know, they come in and they're, oh, I'm a big guy. I was told I got to shoot, and I'm shooting. And, you know, and that's great. You want your big guys to shoot further away from the rim, so they say this way they can get an understanding of, I don't just have to go down and be like Shaq.
Yeah.
But you still want them to have that game, so this way it becomes a backup that they can actually use in case somebody's smaller on them. It doesn't have to be height-wise. It could be also frame-wise. You can be, you know, like a Zion Williams who's 285 and move somebody like Valanciunas right out the way and just go over the top of it. You know, so I feel like don't allow certain points of the game to get away from these kids today. I think teaching all areas the correct way and let them know, listen, the flashy part of the game, it will come because that becomes your secondary move. You know, if a defender is overzealous like Patrick Beverly and Avery Bradley, your flashy move will become your secondary move if the primary move never worked. So that's how I think the game. And if you think about it for a second, Kobe Bryant wasn't the flashiest. It was all hard work, footwork, and mental. And he did all the things. He said, I'm going to be a step faster than my defender, but if he beats me to a spot, I'm going to use a secondary move that'll allow me to free up and score. And if you think about guys today, everything is just, they want to run 100 miles an hour, flashy. And as they get older, it's like, okay, now let me slow it down. Why wait till you get older?
Yeah.
Apply that stuff now so it looks great. So now when you get older, you're still more difficult to guard because it's there.
Yeah. And then all of that you've thought about it, you've gone through like the mental game, and then you've thought about the situations about when you need to do something and when you need to do that secondary move.
Right.
I remember it was a game that I saw it was a few months ago, and there was a girl that I saw, and she had a lot of these like flashier moves and was able to do some certain things, but she also couldn't dribble with her left hand. And so,
right.
You know, I think that sometimes we gotta, you know, step back and make sure that we're developing the full player, and that, you know,
the full package.
Right, the full package. Because if you can only dribble with one hand, well, you can have all the moves you want, but there's a lot that can be taken away from you pretty simple.
And being a coach, I've seen that even this year coaching, where I noticed one point guard, he was just right-handed. So I told my guys, we ran a 3-2. So I like to call it shrink, where my middleman comes up further, almost like at half court, and it becomes a full-out blitz trap. And Now, when you try to double back, we took away your right side, which forces you to throw a long court pass over to your left. By then, that's a steal. We're going all the way down, scoring at the other end.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a coach, you kind of see who they are. That's right-handed, and I like to say right-handed bandit. And when we see that, it's time to eat because it's get them.
Yeah, I mean, if that part of their game hasn't been developed yet, I mean, as a coach, I mean, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to see if you can go left, and well, if you can't, yeah, I mean, then this is going to be what it is. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I guess I just want to go back to that then. So I'm assuming then when it comes to dribbling and when you're working with kids, are you emphasizing then? I'm assuming like both hands and making sure that they have abilities to go both ways. Is that something that you found even with the kids that you're working with at the teenager above level, that they don't have that skill as much, or what have you kind of noticed with that?
There's a lot of kids that's just afraid to use their left hand, but when you come to me, you're going to use that left hand. If you're a righty, you will be using that left hand. Mm-hmm. And what I tend to do is say, put your right hand behind your back and no cones in front of you. I'm just going to tell you, dribble up the court only with your left hand, through the legs, behind the back, spin moves, everything. There's no cones there, no pop-up defenders. It's just you, the basketball, and the court. And I want you to go in any direction that you can. I don't care if you will go in a circle. Just move and dribble the ball. Because I want them to understand that, look at Kyrie. Kyrie is difficult. He's difficult. That dribble is impeccable. And I always say, if you manage to keep the ball between your knees and your ankle, that makes a defender, their chances to guard you is just slim to none, because you're going to move faster than the defender who has to scoot lower and might not be able to move laterally when you start moving like that. Mm-hmm. So if you can control the ball with your left and your right hand being herky-jerky, that defender will have no chance.
Yeah.
So I always try to help these kids build that movement asset with the left hand the way that they feel with their right hand.
Yeah, and it's so just so vital, because so many coaches too are going to say like, okay, let's see if they can go left, and if they have that skill set and they can go left, and like you said, they can dribble really low, then
right.
You've just opened up so much for everybody else too, that there's so many more possibilities that open up just by having that skill set. And it's funny that you mentioned that, you know, can you make a left-handed layup with nobody around you? Because
exactly,
how to start here, like what can you do with nobody here, and then we can start to build in these other things. But yeah, it's so vital. And I think part of it too is, and maybe overall, is you having to get players out of their comfort zone. Do you have experience, I'm assuming you would, with players who maybe they're really successful kind of in their own like level or in their own team, but then you have to also expose some things that they're not so good at because maybe they just haven't practiced them or not comfortable with them?
A lot of the times my guys, they lack two things: mental toughness and the fear of contact. So I said, well, you can't play this game if you don't want contact. You might as well just go swimming. That's the only contact you'll have. So what I like to do is the full court layup, where they have to sprint all the way from the other side, and I'm waiting on the other end. They got to make a move to get past me because I'm looking to flagrant foul you. So I'm not doing it to the point where I'm going to hit you hard or injure you, but I want you to feel what contact is, but keep your focus on finishing the layup.
Yeah.
And there's been times, man, I use the pad and I give them a strong brush, and I'm like, come into me. Don't throw your elbow. Don't flail your forearm. Be smart about it. I want you to think what I'm asking you to do. Mm-hmm. Come at me full speed, but know how to reduce it and try to make a different move, but taking on the contact. This would allow you to do that same option if a defender is trailing you to look for the block. Yeah. If you always try to do things versus speed over thought, that's how you get injured, because your speed is building momentum, and that person's mind is like, hey, I just want to block you. And when you collide in the air, either both or one of you are going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. Instead, why get hurt? slow down as you get closer to the basket, outwit him, and try to complete it, but also get the foul, and then you're happy about it.
Yeah. And what do you think is the reason why players are not wanting contact? Are they worried about getting blocked? Are they worried about getting hurt? Are they worried about not scoring? What do you think is that mental block?
Well, it doesn't matter if it's a home game or away game. Either way you see it, if it's home, your crowd is gonna be like, ooh, you're gonna hear about it in class. If it's away and people know about you, they're gonna toast you on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for most part, it's the fear of being embarrassed, but also that injury.
Yeah.
And I always tell kids, injuries don't come just from you falling. It comes from you not properly stretching and doing all the necessary things to keep your body prepared for the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, an injury can occur on a fall or a certain type of contact, but it's rare. It happens more if you don't stretch properly because it's a lingering injury. You didn't know about it. You kept playing on it. As you can see, Zion, jumper's knee, meniscus tear, had to get surgery.
Yeah.
You can look at the years of proof of the evidence in it with Greg Oden and several other guys that needed surgery within their first game or summer league.
Yep.
And it comes with just coaches utilizing you way too much, not getting the proper stretch. And I think coaches just trying to get their fame off this player, and that hurts the kid in the long run.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I tell my girls too, like don't end up like what I did. I never took care of my ankles, and I sprained my ankles all the time just because I never took care of it, never stretched it properly or did anything. And then, as you know, like the more you sprain your ankle, the more likely you're going to do it again. And that's all I kept doing. So yeah, about proper stretching. Go ahead.
And if you notice, if you look around today, many players are not using weights. They're using more plyometric workouts.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps strengthens the ligaments around the ankle, the knee, the elbow, all those different areas. So this way, when they do become that player at a top level, you don't have to worry about those nagging injuries because you did all these stretch routines to strengthen that area, such as plyometrics, and you didn't hinder it with weights or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. It was funny too. There's a game that I also saw where I noticed a player and they always shied away from contact and always didn't go to contact. And I asked about it, and they said, "Oh well, he just doesn't want to shoot free throws." I was like, "Oh man, like could you? I guess that is a mental block though that people have. Some people I guess need to overcome that too. They don't want to step up in the line and just have all eyes on them to shoot a couple free throws. But I think that kind of goes with that mental toughness part that you were talking about as well.
Mm-hmm. Because I always say you can always teach mental toughness. You can't teach heart.
Yeah.
That's the difference. To make somebody mentally tough, they just have to keep taking on that contact, whether it's with you or in the actual game.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, it'll break you so much to where you have to get tough. In terms of heart, that's just you getting over, whatever fear it is. It could be just your fear of playing in front of a large crowd. It could be the fear of you playing against a team that might look like the Monk Stars. That's just something you have to find a way to kind of like get over it on your own, or maybe with the help of somebody. But mental toughness can always be taught.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that comes kind of with experience and just seeing situations over and over again. And maybe the first time a player sees something, it's overwhelming and they're not ready for it, but they see it and they experience it over and over again. Hopefully kind of builds that toughness and it's not so scary anymore once they keep going through it. Yeah,
exactly.
So, I want to talk about stretching a little bit. It's very important to you because you're still playing, and you talk about how you stretch and make sure that you're properly ready to go for that. So you mentioned about kind of going away from weights and going into plyometrics. So what does proper stretching look like for you, and how do you kind of teach that to your players so that they know how to stretch properly?
So sometimes I tend to mix it up. It might be one day where they just do 5 laps just as a quick warm up, get your blood flowing, your heart pumping. Mm-hmm. Another day it might be jumping jacks for about 2 minutes or so. And from that point, then I say everybody at the baseline, you kind of walk, grab, stretch the hamstrings out, knee hug, hip flexibility. So probably like walking laterally, but where you're kind of like turning, getting the hips open, things like that, karaoke's. So all those different things, sort of like we do it as in a group though. After that, we kind of, I might have a skill set of, ready for the day. But before anything, just to get the arms loose, we kind of like give them a basketball, do a couple of dribble drills to really get your body acclimated and going. And then we start getting into the thick of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just like it's more dynamic that way, the more movement involved and things like that. So I think there's a good trend with that about like kind of being active while you're stretching and then kind of getting the movement going, and it's not so stationary. So that's good in the sense that I think that's a trend. And one of the things that I think is another thing that we're balancing as well, and you mentioned it too, is players, especially at the teenage level, who are trying to do too much in the weight room and trying to maybe go like above what they need to in terms of like developing muscles. That's something that you have to talk to your players about.
Yeah, there's always some people, they want to get bigger than what they actually think they can. Mm-hmm. And the one thing you have to say is you don't work out from the outside in, you work out from the inside out. So basically adequate rest, lots of water, eating the correct way. Get your protein in there because your body produces protein, but sometimes you need a little bit more to enhance it. If you're working out consistently, you'll start to take shape and you'll be happy with it. If you're one of those where it's 7 days in a week and you're only putting 2 days in, now obviously you ain't gonna see the results. Mm-hmm. So I always say just be patient, but be consistent. Everything in life that you do should always have consistency. Don't look to do it 1 or 2 days. Look to do it 4 days, 5 days. Give the body proper rest 2 days if you want. Or if you don't want to rest, go moderate on the days that should be a rest day. So this way your body can actually still recover at that time.
Yeah.
So those are some things that I've always pointed out to kids.
I think that's so important in that sometimes that we can get caught up with making sure that you're working out, making sure you're doing this, that, or the other, but also like make sure you get enough sleep, make sure that you're having time to recover and let yourself rest, and like you said, like sometimes you get players who are just like go and they want to max out as quickly as possible, but if you try doing that, you're not going to, because your body's never resting, it's never repairing, it's never recovering, and sleep and all those things are just as vitally important as the work that you're putting in a weight room. So,
and you can always draw a comparison if you look at players from the let's say 70s and 80s mm-hmm. versus the players of the new millennium. The players today, their careers are lasting longer. Mm-hmm. They're not playing as many back-to-back games. They also got this thing with, I'm not a fan of it, but I'm old school. But again, I respect what they're doing today, load management.
Yeah.
So players are getting proper rest where they might play a game Monday and Tuesday, but they're off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So people don't understand the weary your body takes when you have to jump on a plane. You're sleeping in a hotel bed that's normally not your bed. Mm-hmm. You're playing in another city, then game over. You jump back on the plane. Jet lag because you're flying to another city to play. So all of those things take into effect on your body, especially if you can't get the adequate rest for it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Like the getting rest and repairing and recovering and I couldn't even imagine with all the travel as well and sleeping in beds that aren't yours and having to just get adjusted to that. There was an article that I read, it was a long time ago, and I'll see if I can find it and put it in the notes about how your brain recognizes when you're not sleeping in your own bed. So like there's only a certain level of rest you're allowed to get because your brain is aware that you're not in your normal surroundings. So like all of that is super true. You mentioned about players and they get overworked and they get injured, and you kind of touched on how sometimes maybe the coaches are kind of in it for themselves and at the detriment of the players. So do you have situations where players, either in your conversations with them, where their coach isn't their coach is telling them to do something that like maybe you're not, or they feel that they're being overworked? Is there like a disconnect or a way that you can kind of advise for players to kind of speak up for themselves and kind of try and have a better relationship with their coach?
I always say, if you look at AAU, and this is not me taking a shot at AAU, I think it's phenomenal. I just feel that a lot of pressure is put on kids today.
Yeah.
They're playing so many games and they're traveling at young ages, so that takes a toll on your body. Then, that's the physical part. Now we got to talk about the mental part, because many of these kids are still in school.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the times I've seen kids run home and they're saying, "Oh, I got practice." Well, you also have homework. You also have to study. You also might have a test. And, coaches today sometimes tell them, well, you can still do that. Just do it later. Later might be 9, 10 o'clock, to where now your body is shut down and says, "I'm tired and I just need to rest." And now you go to class and your teacher said, "Well, where's your homework?" "I didn't do it. I had practice late last night." And so you have to be careful in terms of coaches. And again, I'm not taking shots at
Sure.
any AAU coach. For me, what I tell my players, because I've had kids tell me, "Coach, if I end up playing pro balls because of you, and I'll come back and I'll pay you." And I said, "Well, if you think I'm doing this for the money, then you're solemnly mistaken. I'm doing it because of love." I always say, if you want to give money, give it towards my camps, to where I can help buy more equipment that'll help and be beneficial for more younger kids coming in. Or if you are at that level, come by sometime, talk to the kids as I once talked to you. Give them some feedback now that you're on that level, on what it takes to get there and the things you did to get there. So I always come at them from those type of angles. I don't look at it from money, because sometimes when you get into it for money, your love is no longer there. Then what was your true passion in getting into this for the first place? Mm-hmm. There's times where I never charged a kid. My fees are just as cheap as possible. And if you can't, then okay, I'm fine with that. I have a job, and God has blessed me to be fortunate enough to have played overseas, to where I made a living for myself, and now I'm still working and making a living for myself. So I feel like I was spiritually called to do what I'm doing, which is teach and giving back. Yeah. And I look at it as too many kids are dying today, and dying before they can reach their potential. So I look at it from that different standpoint. And again, maybe some AAU coaches are looking at it that way too, but I just see certain things, and that's what I'm speaking about. So that's why I say I'm not taking shots at any coach. It's just certain things that I have seen and heard.
Yeah. And you bring up a point too about like the players and the levels that they're aspiring to get at, and they're balancing all these different things about school and feeling like they got to practice and do this, that, and the other, because maybe they have aspirations to play beyond high school. And so I want to touch on that really quickly, is that I'm sure you have situations where players, they have these real high dreams, these real high aspirations, and they feel that, okay, I have to play in college, I have to go play beyond college, and things like that. And at the same time, balancing the fact that they are still teenagers, they are still kids. And so how do you kind of balance the development of them as people and as players with the fact that some of them come with these huge aspirations and put all this pressure on themselves?
First thing is respect and listen to your parents. Mm-hmm. Sometimes kids think that they know more than we do. And I'm like, I don't want you guys to think we were just born as adults and skip that part of life. And here we are. So yeah, you know more than we do. What I do say is I would never know the stress that these kids go through today, because we didn't have social media. Mm-hmm. Our FaceTime was, "Hey, I'm in the park, I'll see you with me." Or if I was playing a video game, my friend was next to me in my house, or vice versa. Now you can play online, do all these different things online to where you don't have to be next to the person. Not only that, social media plays a huge role in these kids' lives to where they're easily bullied and all these different things. So, to try to develop it, I would say, well, if somebody is not in front of you and they're saying certain things, you can easily just turn the computer off. You don't have to be watching every word that comes through up there and take it personally because this person doesn't know who you are. Never allow somebody to judge you when they've never met you. And I always say, if I wrote 1,000 words on this paper that was foul language or really disrespectful, but I tell you, don't read it. But I'm throwing the paper at you, but you just never read it. Will this paper hurt you? No. So then don't let what people say to you hurt you, because you don't have to accept what they say. Allow yourself to be strong on the outside, and whatever they say, take it on the inside, but allow it to build you. Don't falter to anything people say about you. If somebody say you suck, prove them wrong. Go back and work harder. If they say you can't do this, prove them wrong. Go back and do it. And I take that aspect with me in anything in life, whether I'm in the classroom teaching, whether I'm trying to learn a different skill set or teach a different skill set that I know can be done. You just have to try it and try harder. All those different things. And I think, you apply that to yourself every day with life. If somebody is trying to rob you, don't be macho. Listen, please, I have a life. I love my life. Take whatever you want, but please, I wouldn't even turn you in. I just want to live, and you do whatever you can to stay alive and get out of it. And if it's your goal to turn them into the authorities and let them know, then you do so. And if you feel like you're a man of your word and you told them you're not turning them in, it's whatever you can do to stay alive and make things right for you. So those are the things I try to teach the kids.
Well, you bring up, a really tough subject, especially for kids with social media. And I know I've talked about it on a few interviews here, and that one of the things that I think that we as coaches just need to make sure that we understand is that, when we were playing, or whether it was, 20, 25 years ago, that the only people I really had to compare myself with were the other people around me. Now kids can go on social media and they can see, just in a basketball sense, they could just see players from everywhere, high school players from everywhere, and they're always comparing themselves to everybody, and that, it's not healthy. And like you said, you gotta unplug, and you gotta turn off and focus on your own, individual development. And I think something too is also just surrounding yourself by people who have like your best interests in mind, like whether it's your parents or whoever it is, and just listening to the people who have your best interest in mind. And there's a lot of things on social media where people there probably and most likely don't, and to make sure you're giving attention to the people who do.
Exactly.
So to wrap up, Coach, what I want to do is I want to have you share a moment in your coaching, your training, and any moment that you had that you think others might be able to learn from.
For me, I have a daughter, and I think what's getting away today would be girls basketball, especially just in New York City. And I say that because, girls today, it's like once you lose them, you lose them. And many of them end up getting depressed easily. They fall into the hands of either an older man or whatever the case may be. And, their love is just gone. Once you lose them, you lose them. So I feel there are girls out there that love basketball. It's just so difficult to reel them in because there's not enough programs for them.
Yeah.
And, I have a girl that I've been training since she was in sixth grade, and now she's about to be a senior this year. And she thanks me every single day for being a part of her life, and she calls me dad, and I love her like she's my own daughter. And, I'm trying to get her into these colleges to play ball and everything. I just feel like girls basketball in New York has dissipated. And I think we just as coaches need to do more for girls, because everybody's doing programs for boys. Every coach is out there for boys. And I just feel that we need to do more for a lot of these young girls that are out here. And let's get them at an earlier age. Let's not wait until they're in 7th or 8th grade and even high school. Let's get them before that, so that's where their mind is still fresh. Make them believe that they can get to that level. Push them so they can get to that level. Continue to be there, guide them, talk to them, all these different things. So this way they're not persuaded by some boy who just sees them as something else, or they feel like they got to fit in because this girl is the pretty one and I'm not. Everybody's going to grow and come into their own at some point. The pretty ones sometimes become ugly later down the road, and the ugly ones become the pretty ducklings, or whatever the case may be. But make them believe, make them feel special, and have that heart of gold, so one day they can prosper into something better.
It speaks right to my heart as a girls basketball coach. Yeah, it speaks right to me, and just promoting the girls game and continuing to understand that there's so many girls who could fall in love with basketball if, like you said, we reach them at a young age, if we continue to foster that in them. And yeah, I mean, that speaks right to me, and 1,000% agree. And for those listening, if you haven't listened to my interview with Carly Whitney, we just spent an hour talking about girls basketball and promoting and growing the game. So yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more. As a girls coach and just as a basketball coach in general, all over the country, that we need to do a better job promoting the girls game. 100% agree.
Yeah.
All right, Coach. The last thing is I want to give you what I call my 60-second soapbox, where you can reinforce something you said, get out a final thought, a closing thought, something that you want to make sure our listeners hear before we wrap up.
Okay. Anybody that's listening, when it comes to sports or just anything in life, stay consistent to it, stay committed with it, and always work hard. If you do all those things, it will pan out. You may not make it to that professional level. It may just be a collegiate level. We do understand that that's a small percentage that do actually make it pro, and we just have to accept that. But in life, whatever you do as a teen or even as a young child to build into that team, it will transition with you to your adulthood, to where maybe someday you'll be able to help somebody else out that was in your position, but they're younger now. Always do any and everything that you enjoy. Do it with love and passion. Never do it for money. Be honest with all your players. Make them work hard and show them that when you do, good things come out of it. And be, always look to have that trust and that love with your players, but also for yourself.
Great. Great thought. Always to keep in mind why we got into this for the first place. Whether you're coaching or teaching, it's very unlikely it's for the money or for the fame. It's for the development of these players, not just as players, but as people. So yeah, great thought. Coach, I want to thank you again for joining us and sharing some insight about your journey, about training individual basketball players and just coaching in general. It was really informative. I really appreciate it, and thank you, and good luck going forward, Coach.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And anytime, whenever you want to do this again, it was fun, and I appreciate the offer.
Thank you. It was a great conversation. Thank you guys for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.